Hello and welcome to Lesson 4 of Coding with Sahana. First, we will complete last week's challenge of the week. Next, we will finish our unit on built-in functions. Then, we will do a practice problem on program is. Finally, I will introduce this week's challenge of the week. Now let's look at last week's challenge of the week. First, let's start off with our introduction print statement. Print. I'm going to find the sum of a numerical sequence of data you create. Now let's create variables for our start, stop, and step size. So start is equal to the input of what integer would you like to start at? \n. Stop will be equal to the input of what integer would you like to stop at? \n. Now our step would be equal to the input of what integer would you like to step at? \n. Now I will put each of my inputs into integer functions so that we can use these values in the range of my list. Next, I will create a variable that I will name seq, which will equal to a list with a range of my start, comma, stop, comma, step. This is the third syntax of the range function. Finally, I will print in quotes your sequence, colon, comma, string of sequence so that we can add it to a comma, has a total of comma, sum of our sequence, and then this will be a string so that we can add this to a period. Now let's run our code. What integer would I like to start at? 2. What integer would I like to stop at? For example, 24. And what integer would I like to step at? 3. Oh, we forgot an R in your for your sequence. This is why it's very important to double check your code for minor spelling mistakes such as this. Now let's run our code. 2, 24, 3. Now we get our desired output. Your sequence 2, 5, 8, 11, 14, 17, 20, 23 has a total sum of 100. Now let's briefly review some of the built-in functions we looked at last lesson. The input function allows us to get information from the user and give an output based on that. We use the \n so the user can enter their answer on the next line. As you can see, I use the built-in function type to find the class of the input. As we also discussed last lesson, all inputs are defaulted to string, and thus the type function outputs the class as string. We also looked at the list, len, and range functions. The list function converts strings and groups of numbers into a group. The len function finds the length of a string, and it includes all letters, symbols, and spaces. The range function is used to return a sequence of numbers, and ranges in Python start at 0. Refer to the previous lesson for details on the 3 range syntaxes. We also briefly looked at the round function. When we don't put a number after the number we want to round, it rounds the value to the nearest integer. However, when we put a comma and an integer, the round function rounds that value to that many decimal places. Now let's look at the absolute function. As you can see, just as the name suggests, the absolute function finds the absolute value of numbers. The power function finds the value of the first number to the power of the second number. In this case, for 2 to the power of 3, it outputted 8. For the second input, we were able to find the square root by setting the second number to 0.5, because all numbers to the power of 0.5 is the same as finding the square root. You could achieve a similar output by doing 2 *3 or 49 *0.5 instead of using the power function. The maximum and minimum functions find the maximum and minimum of a set of numbers. The sum function finds the sum of a set of numbers. The sorted function sorts a list of numbers into numerical order. It can also sort a list of letters or words into alphabetical order. There are around 68 Python built-in functions. We went over the main ones, but as you need them, you can simply do a Google search and use the W3 School's website to learn about new ones. Now, let's do some practice with built-in functions. So our assignment is to write a program that will find the hypotenuse of a triangle by first asking our user to input the measures of the 2 legs of a right triangle, and 2, returning a conclusion statement displaying the measure of the hypotenuse rounded to 1 decimal place. To do this, first let's code our introduction statement. Print. Let's find the length of the hypotenuse of a right triangle. Next, let's create variables for each of our legs of the triangle. Leg 1 is equal to the input of what is the length of the first leg of the right triangle? \n. And leg 2 will be the input of What is the length of the second leg of the triangle? Now we will create a variable for our hypotenuse, hyp, which will be equal to leg 1 to the power of 2 plus leg 2 to the power of 2. All of this to the power of 0.5. This is also known as the Pythagorean theorem. Now we will put this into a round function so that we can round our hypotenuse to the first decimal place. Now we will put a float function around each of our variables for easy calculation. Finally, let's make our final print statement. Print the length of the hypotenuse is, comma, the string of hyp plus period. Now let's run our code. Now for example, I will put the length of my first leg as 3 and the second leg as 4. It calculated the hypotenuse as 5. This week's challenge of the week is to write a program that will input the user's name, greet the user, input the user's age, calculates the user's age in 5 years, and then counts to that future age. The example output should print as follows. My first hint to you is to create a variable for the user's input of age. My second hint is to use a list with a set range. Good luck! Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and click on the bell icon for notifications on my next video.